Our Mama Crate Up series are now all online, and they're all in tandem with our exhibition that we had physically in the University Art Museum here in Las Cruces, New Mexico, called Labor, Motherhood, and Art in 2020. It's an exhibition that, even though it's closed, it is completely online, and we would love you to view it. You can go to our website, uam.nmsu.edu, and you can go ahead and click on current exhibitions. We have a full museum walkthrough of this exhibition, including the main contemporary gallery, which is has artworks by Yoko Ono, Jessica Jacqueline Hutchins, Maria Barrio, Wendy Red Star, Amy Cutler, Joey Farso, and other artists such as that. It's a beautiful exhibition that we're really proud of, and it takes a look at conversations going on right now inside and outside of the art world, both social, political, and art historical, through works of installation, sculpture, photography that speak about motherhood and mothering currently in our society. And we would really love you to take a look at that exhibition, and we are hoping that the exhibition will reopen once the University Art Museum opens, and we are working on having it extended through December now. So we're hoping that our full online, off-campus, on-campus community does get to see it. We have some great series coming up, including the one that we're gonna talk about today with Heather and Marissa, that we're very excited and proud to be hosting. But if you go onto our schedule events, also on our website in the main menu, you'll see all of the upcoming Mama Create Ups. This is our second one of the series. We have a Mama Create Up all about FMLA coming up, the Family Medical Leave Act. We also have, and that's on July 25th. On August 15th, we have a really exciting Mama Create Up, which will have a doula, a midwife, and an OBGYN talking about different forms of exploring childbirth options during COVID-19. And now we've really opened it up to not just speak about the New Mexico community, but kind of the whole community forms of birthing options. So we're really excited about that one. And with each and every Mama Create Up, we have in tandem our Outsmart workshops, our children's workshops. Right now, as of 9 minutes ago, Isadora Stowe's workshop. Hi, Isadora. Say hello to us. Hi. Isadora's Outsmart Children's Workshop, Andy Warhol Animal Portraits went live. So all you have to do to see that is go on to uam.nmsu.edu/Outsmart. And in Andy Warhol Animal Portraits, she's given us an online option where you can watch her. She's fantastic. It's so much fun. Do a live demonstration of it for your children. So I know a lot of people do not have two computers, so as soon as this is over, you can pop them in front of the computer, or you could download the PDF and print it out. She gave us photographs of dogs and cats that you can utilize within the workshop. It's a great workshop. Thank you, Isadora, for doing it for us. And for each Mama Create Up, we'll have a children's workshop, and we've been giving away free kits. So this morning from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., we gave kits away in the Devastali parking lot. I know that a lot of you are out of state, so that might not be possible, but we've been also figuring out different options of how we can get kits to families across the states. That might be an option, so you can email us and we can talk to you about that. So without further ado, let me introduce our Mama Create Up presenters for today with Carve Out Time for Your Art, with Heather Kirtland and Marissa Huber. I'll just say a little bit and then I'll really let them kind of speak for themselves. Marissa is an artist, a connector, a creative instigator, which I love, for the Carve Out Time for Your Art community, and she's the co-author of the Motherhood of Art. She works primarily as an artist in water-based mediums, digital drawing, and as she says, I love this, occasional attempts to lino cut printing and silk dyeing, which is difficult. Her work was influenced by colors, patterns, plants, and daily life. And her work has been featured at the Brooklyn Art Library, HGTV Magazine, Design Love Fest, and she's really kind of all over the place. Check out her Instagram, Marissa Huber. And Heather Kirtland is an artist who received her BFA in painting from the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is my master's alma mater. So I have to say, woo, woo, Micah. Heather currently teaches encaustic workshops and is focused on her own studio practice. She was awarded the Maryland State Arts Council grant and was the resident of the Holt Center. And most recently, she's become a West Elm local artist. And her work has been exhibited throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, abroad, also has had some really amazing accolades. I'm really, really proud to introduce and have both Marissa and Heather for this presentation. And without further ado, please, Marissa and Heather, take it over.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for having us. We're absolutely honored to be here. And even though it couldn't be in person, this is just very wonderful. So thank you. So Heather,
yeah, thanks so much for having us. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's I'm excited to be here as well. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think that was a great introduction. I don't know if there's much more to say about who we are, other than who we are as Carve Out Time for Art. So when Marissa and I kind of found each other, Marissa was already interviewing mother artists. So she had a blog and she was interviewing other artists for a while before I met her, and I found her through Instagram. But if you want to give that background real quick, Marissa, your blog background.
Yeah, let me see. And sorry, let me go to these slides. Well, once we wanted to introduce ourselves, I think that, yes, Marissa, you said it wonderfully. And I added a couple of different things about us, like we all wear many hats.
Yes, it's for sure.
Let me see. Hold on. Here, let me go with myself. So I have a full-time job. I'm a senior occupancy planner. I do a lot of things. I kind of fell into pattern design, and I got frustrated around 2015 because I noticed that everybody was telling me that what I couldn't do with my time because I was a mom. And that was in my corporate job. That was anywhere I encounter people. And I had been reading blogs and even writing my own since 2005. Thank you, Flickr. So I knew there was examples of people doing things, whether that was knitting or creating. I met one of our lovely people like Jess and Emily who are on the call, hi, through these blogs. And I just knew that there was examples out there. And when I'm tired and when things are hard, sometimes I forget. And I think those people were right. So I set out to interview people so that I could get encouragement and also spread that to others, because kind of that's what I do. If I'm going to learn something great, let me pass it on. So I met Heather and we just connected instantly. We talked on the phone for 2 minutes?
Yeah, didn't take long.
No, and then we decided we had to team up to come up with like a book project, basically.
Yeah. So I had struggled as a new mom. It really threw me for a huge loop in my art practice at first. I didn't see that coming. I couldn't find any examples of mother artists and how they were making it work. It seemed that even if you had kids, you didn't talk about it in the art world. When I went to art school, it was primarily male-dominated painting department. So it was definitely said many a times, you can't be a serious artist if you have children. So I think that probably was subconsciously in my head. So when I met up with Marissa and we both had the same passion, we wanted to see how we could create the book we wish we would have had. And that's kind of how the book project went. And I also want to say that I'm a hairstylist part-time as well. I think it's important for me to always tell people that it might look like I'm a full-time artist and I pay the bills that way, but I don't. I have a job and I'm an artist. I think it's important to kind of let people know that not that it's not possible, but that it's okay if this is not what you are doing professionally full-time. Yeah.
And I think that's been really, I'm going to go advance the slide just to show you about Carve Out Time for Art. So this is us 98% of the time, because those are beautiful pictures that we took one time, but this is us in our real life making it work. And our big passion, I think, is showing others, like, you can do something. It might not look like what you assume everybody is doing on the internet, because maybe we've all been there at times. But like this picture of myself with my kids sitting on my computer, that was really a work day. That was crazy, but it was our book launch day. And we're like, we're going to make sure that we celebrate this 5-year book project that came through, you know, after a lot of perseverance, a lot of rejections. But we also had real life coming in, and my husband, I'm like, you have to take this picture. Like, this is actually happening. I mean, you know, or like we tried to have a FaceTime call to have a work meeting for the project, and our kids all jumped in, right?
We're coming from a place of being realistic about what this life looks like and what being a creative mama looks like.
Yeah. But over time, I think like these small minutes, which we'll get to in just a second, is you can really make a lot of progress with 15 minutes or 5 minutes, or thinking about something while you're doing the dishes or playing with Legos, you know?
Yeah.
So let me go to a little bit about Carve Out Time for Art and where you guys can find us. Do you want to talk about that, Heather?
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to read our mission statement, but you know, basically we're kind of, as Marissa calls herself, a creative instigator, which I think is a great description. Like, we really hope we can support people in whatever their creative passions are and kind of get them outside of just thinking about it or thinking that it's something for other people or it's something they've always wanted to do but they can't. And we wanted to create a safe little place on the internet where you could be real and share your progress and share your work and your struggles. So because we had both had this interest in supporting mother artists, that's kind of what it started out as. But I think we found a niche with people that have full-time jobs and want to be creative, people that have always wanted to be an artist and can't seem to think of themselves as one even though they're creating. Things like that, and that there's a community and that you can call yourself an artist when you start making art of any sort.
Mm-hmm. I think so. And we like it to be a place where we can have fun conversations and connect with others and build a community, because one thing we found, and this might relate to people on this call, is if you don't have in-person, if maybe your family doesn't understand what you need, if you are not the type of person who needs to be creating, whether that is cooking even, like, or knitting, whatever it might be, painting, then you need to find that support of people who get you, because otherwise you might feel guilty for needing that time. You know, like, you can't go to brunch with your friends when we can do that again, because you need to get that studio time, and that's the only time you can get it. So that's really important to us.
Yeah, and I think once again, to touch on that real quick, Marissa, that was a struggle with me as a new mom. So you meet other new moms and you have your play dates and you start to feel like you have that new mom support, but I couldn't get the support for people that understood why I was craving studio time.
Yeah, like, why can't you just come to lunch?
Right.
Because you won't feel like a human if you don't get that time. So let me see our next slide. Okay, so here's a little bit about, actually, I don't mean to jump back. Let me just go to this one. Shoot. Excuse me. I just wanted to show you, this is what we want to talk about today. So you can see the screen. We're going to, the book, why it's important, which we're talking about now, some of the benefits of creativity, some of the roadblocks, and some mom guilt that we've seen, or no mom guilt too. Knowing yourself and finding support, and some tactical tips. And then at the end, we'd love to have some Q&A. So now I'm going to jump back to where we were. And right here. Okay. So this is a little bit about our book. Like Heather said, we needed some encouragement, and we didn't see this book out here. I know that, like, Heather always says that one time you were frustrated and you wanted to Google artist mothers, and who did you find?
Information about like who Picasso's mom might be, Vincent van Gogh's mom. Like, I legit could not find, and I changed that Google search up 800 times to try to get what I was saying. I was like, no, artists that have children, like women artists that have children. And even like with Susan Rothenberg's recent passing, I'm still not sure I can find information if she had a family. And Jane Bartlett was somebody I really, liked in college as well. And there was never anything about their life beyond their paintings. So It was frustrating.
And I think it's important, not that we have to focus on like that part, but just to know that people can do that, and just to have some role models or inspiration or clarity, like, oh, this person was able to do it, so I can make that work for myself. It kind of goes with having representation in whatever you're seeing, which is a different topic, but I think related in a way. Okay, so there's some quotes you can have enjoyed that are from our book. Yeah, that was one of mine too. I hated hearing, just you wait, you know. So, and then here's what we did. We probably did 70 artist mother interviews over 2.5 years, but for this book, we interviewed 33 women from around the world. So this is where we'll be drawing a lot of the tips and inspiration. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the importance of creative time. And I don't even think we'll have to tell the people who are on this call, but we just wanted to share that if anyone's doubting why creative time or just time for yourself, your passion projects is important. So I don't know. I guess look at this list. Do any of these resonate with you guys? Let's see. I think for me, let me see. The one feeling like a human, like I think that if I don't have a little bit of time to use my hands or create, even if it's like once every other week, it's not all the time with me. But I will feel like life is just chores and it makes me feel a little down. That's
for sure.
Yeah. But we hear, yeah, I think Heather has a kid. Yeah. We hear from a lot of people that, you know, for some people, it could be a spiritual practice. It can be an act of meditation. If people have anxiety or depression, that can help. Of course, you know, get help for those things if you have mental illness. But one of the artists in our book has been wonderful to share about bipolar disorder and how her therapist recommended she turn to, you know, creating art as a way to manage that. And I mean, that's incredibly powerful.
I think, I mean, not all of us, I think most people here understand the importance of it, because you know the difference in how you feel when you get that studio time and you get some time to create versus when you can't find that time.
Yeah. And I think we've been talking a lot about during this presentation in our heads, how does this relate to COVID right now? Because right now life is uncertain for very many people. So I think a lot of the people on the call are parents or maybe have older children or younger children, but it's kind of like the same thing every day. And when you can find this time, it can help you feel a little bit more at peace, because, you know, to take that knot out of your stomach if you have any anxiety about things going on, or just having more patience with the people that you're lovingly trapped at home with.
Yeah, and it's funny, I think, and this will probably comes a little bit later when we talk about some tactical tips too, but I definitely, in my head, started to relate this time to postpartum a little bit, where I had this uncertainty of what's going to happen with my life because it's completely different than it was. And then on top of that, being kind of in charge of everyone all over again in this tiny little space, and I couldn't escape. So it really made me feel like I felt, you know, those first couple weeks coming home with a newborn.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is it doesn't have to be anything. It just the act of being creative and giving that to yourself can help you to, you know, just, it can do loads. So this one was how carving out time for art has changed some lives. These are women in our book. Do you want to talk to these ones?
Yeah. So it's really interesting when we were doing these interviews to find out kind of also the opposite spectrum of things, where you have moms that, and this happened with me as well after my, you know, total lack of creating, found their art once they became moms. It gave them a new opening into the creative practice, and they started, I feel, and I'm speaking a little bit for them here, but I feel like with Rachel, I kind of, she published 3 books after becoming a mom. And I think for me, I relate to that in the sense that I feel a little less scared to try things. Like after keeping a human alive, you know, that I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do for a year, and, you know, all the changes that I went through, you kind of start to prove to yourself how capable you are. And you're a little less scared to ask somebody, hey, I want to publish a book, or hey, can you help me figure out how to do this? Because the worst they're going to say is no. And to me, that was a lot easier to do once I had my kids, once I became a mother.
Yeah. And it just, I felt like there was a sense of urgency, you know, after I had a child, where, you know, I don't know if it's like you're short on time or things don't feel as precious anymore. Like when everything's so precious, then nothing is precious in a way. But I felt like, well, if I need to do these things, I need to do them now. And especially when you feel like you have no time, when you do find yourself with 20 minutes, you get straight to work. And all that fear and doubt, you have to let it go, or just, put it on the back burner if you want to do the work. Otherwise, you'll just sit there. So we highlighted Marianne Moody because she's phenomenal. She's in Australia, then she moved to Brooklyn and moved back to Australia. But she became an artist when she became a mother. She did not come from a creative family. In her words, everybody was surprised. She said when she found weaving, she just felt like she knew what to do with her hands. And she teaches workshops all over the world and, has been in lots of press. So I think that's incredible. So you hear you can't do anything when you're a parent. This woman became an artist and an entrepreneur. So that's a great one. And Rachel's example too. Go to the next slide. And a plug for Ladies Drawing Night. That's one of my favorite books. I love that book. You guys should check it out. Okay. So this kind of goes into some of little bit of our tips, or just knowing yourself if you're looking to get more creative time, or I guess even clarity on how you can manage. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, for me, this is something I have learned about myself, speaking of knowing yourself. When I feel like I'm not creating, or I've hit a rut, or all through this entire quarantine, I have learned that I can't, it's easier if I know myself. So I know that I like to get up early. I can get up early. I can set that alarm early. I like the mornings. I am never going to be able to stay up late and get anything done. And I think I'm probably in the easier aspect of that. I think people that are not early risers try to make themselves early risers. And I don't think that's smart. I think you need to realize that, okay, no, I'll stay up late. That's where I'm finding my time. Instead of trying to force yourself into a peg that's not going to fit you, realize what is important to you. Do to-do lists make you feel good, or do they make you feel like you're not getting anything done? Like, kind of really evaluate who you are and what feels good for you. And don't try to fit yourself into someone else's idea of how to go about the best way to organize, or how to go about the best way to set goals. And I think what you can do is, when you know yourself and you're honest with what feels good and what's worked for you in the past and what you've had success with, then you can go about looking at your new situation you're in, like quarantine for me, and being like, okay, so what's going to work for me here so that I can get back in the studio? Like, what is it that I need to do to make that time? And I was sleeping in a little bit. So I'm just like, I'll just set my alarm a little earlier, and I got myself a little of that time back. I think knowing what is high priority to you, and even that could be as simple as, okay, I cannot stand to go to bed with the sink full of dishes, because I don't want to wake up in the morning with a sink full of dishes. Now I could care less if the laundry doesn't get folded for 2 weeks. So for me, I make it a priority to have myself or someone do the dishes and before we go to bed. But I'm not going to press myself to do the laundry and fold everything and put everything away, because it's just not something that gets in my way when I get to the studio. So I think really try to look at that. And then the other trick I really like is kind of, especially now when things are constantly changing and we have no idea what's coming next, unfortunately, is to just reassess every 2 weeks. Like, don't try to right now set out that long-term 6-month, 1-year plan, because you're going to drive yourself crazy with the lack of control you're going to have over it. So really take the time and say, okay, 2 weeks. This 2 weeks is what it looks like. I know you're going to come back in 2 weeks and reassess again, but that takes a lot of anxiety and stress off making your plans right now, or figuring out your studio goal. And we always talk about this a lot, Marissa, too, like, of course I lost the word for it now. Like, set the bar low, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I want to get 1 project done in 2 weeks, or I want to get 2 projects done. If you are not under some, monetary deadline, and you're doing this for your own sanity, don't drive yourself crazy for sake of your own sanity. So really say, okay, this next 2 weeks, I'd really like to get this one thing done. And then, as Marissa always likes to do, to break it down in chunks and break it down into little tiny actionable goals that are going to get you there in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And don't be crappy with yourself. Like, sometimes I have some friends who they might get really down on themselves. They're not meant for the goal setting, let's say. I'm good with goal setting because if I don't complete a goal, I'm like, life got in the way. But I think that's with knowing yourself. But I'll talk with my friends if they feel like down and just really shaming themselves. I'll say, what would you say to me if I did that? You know? And I think just reminding yourself, if you start getting down, to remember, like, would I tell Heather this? Would I say, I can't believe you didn't do that. I can't believe you let that, those laundry get in the way this one time. But let me see. What were we going to say about, the reassessing. I thought that was so good because you guys, since it was 2020, at the beginning of this year, we were like, oh my gosh, our book tour, we told our husbands, hey, this is our year. We're gonna be traveling, and they were happy about this. They're ready to support us. So we're trying to figure out, but I remember starting to stress. I was weaning my little baby right before we went to Alt Summit in March, which was a little traumatic. We were renovating a house, and I would start stressing about that. And Heather actually gave me really good advice. She's like, and my husband too, he's like, you can't do anything about it right now from here. So just don't think about it. Don't call and listen to her cry, which she did for hours. Sorry, Mom. Thank you. And Mike, but and then when we were worried about the things that were going to happen in April, like us visiting here, we were, excited to come to Las Cruces. It got canceled, or we had a speaking event, and we had all of these things that I was starting to worry about the logistics of. It didn't matter. So I like the 2-week thing. Let me see. Let me go back. Hold on. And it's also good to have a friend who you can go back and forth with.
Yeah. And that 2-week thing helps a lot because you can evaluate what your family situation is. Because that comes into play too. Like, if you have a partner, are they really busy the next 2 weeks? And if they are they going to need you to pick up more of the workloads? And maybe don't set a studio goal, things like that.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like, you really want to do this photography project, but it's not the right time right now. Maybe you can shelf that, and can you do something else? Can you take a class on the goals? I think just working with where you're at and knowing the circumstances is really important. And then you can feel like you're making traction towards this vision you might have, but it's not going to look like this direct path that you might think it is. But that doesn't mean it can't happen or even be bigger or better than what you had thought.
And that to me was my big lesson as I became a mom. Because when I first had my daughter and I thought I was never going to create again, and I didn't know how I was ever going to feel creative, and I was never going to have studio time, and I was going to be just a mom. And lo and behold, that wasn't the case. So it's a good lesson that I had to learn a few times before it sunk in, but this is not forever. Right now, you might just need to deal with your immediate needs. So, but know that it's not going anywhere. Your creativity will be there, and it may be even stronger because you gave it a minute to breathe and you weren't on top of it the whole time.
Yeah. And one thing, we talked about the setting the bar low. So right now I'm not really commuting. I'm working from home. But one thing I'll do is I needed some creativity in my life, but a few years back, it was just very swamped at work. I was working crazy hours, but I decided to do a 100-day project. And it was a 5-minute exercise that I did on my phone that had a cracked screen, by the way, which was ridiculous. I should have just fixed it. But I made it work. I did a 100-day project, and people were like, oh, this is beautiful on Instagram. And behind the scenes, I'm like, it's just a mess. But people see these squares and they think that, somebody, has their life figured out. I don't think anybody does, really. But I think that it was a lesson for me to say, if you want to do something, you can find a way. It might not look like what you think it will, but it doesn't have to be huge. You can work with whatever the parameters are that you can have, but you can let it stop you, or you can just move forward. And looking back, that project kind of led me to go into a different path and get more digital, and really it taught me my color sensibility, and it impacted me, and I would not have thought that at the time.
Yeah, so that's a great And then on the other end of the spectrum, so if you need something to get you going, a project is a great idea. And it doesn't have to be something that makes you stress. If a 30-day project makes you stress, or making something every day makes you stress, then make it what you need it to be. I'll create 5 things this month, or I will sketch every time my son's on his iPad.
Yeah.
Big sketchbook, let me tell you. But on the other end of that is, sometimes if you can't address it right away, don't underestimate your mind is still working on it. Your mind is still creating. You're still an artist. Just because you're not in the studio and you're not actively working on something doesn't mean that your brain isn't putting together all these connections for you that will come around and all come together at some point.
Yeah. So one of the things we had here was just some suggestions, like ask for help, identify a support system. And I'm going to point to this picture. These are people that I met on the internet and then I met in real life who have just been lovely. So if you don't have that support in real life, or you need somebody to be an accountability partner, there's so many people you can find online to just cheer each other on. And you can always come visit us. We'll cheer you on as well. And then this was one that I think you had written, Heather, the acknowledge your grief and fear.
Yeah, I think you can't ignore it. I mean, if it's really pulling you under, then you need to take a minute and be sad and be angry and worry and have your anxiety attack. But don't let it keep you under. Like, give it its time, give it its place, but then realize that it's not, once you've gotten it out of your system, that it's not productive anymore. If you're able to do that. I mean, I'm not, there's people that suffer from anxiety that cannot do that. But I think to acknowledge the fact that you're really sad about something. I really had to take a minute and mourn the fact that my artistic life was not going to be me in a pied-à-terre in Paris by myself. And once I mourned that life and realized, no, I'm a mom and things were nice, things were good. I just had to change what I thought I was going to be and who I thought I was going to be, and realize that I was exactly where I was supposed to be.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, and I love this because you had said, if you don't need to address something like right away, say something's in your mind and you're struggling with something, if you don't have to address something right away, you can kind of just put it in the back of your brain and just let your subconscious kind of work on it. And I know we've both had, sometimes it will just end up working out. Either the 2 weeks change everything and it doesn't matter, or you kind of come up with a solution.
Yeah, and I think acknowledging the fact that you don't have to always make a decision right that very minute. Mm-hmm. Like when some sort of problem or obstacle gets in your way, or you do have a decision to make, sometimes, and there's not a deadline behind, there's not like an immediate, by tomorrow, I need to know what your choice is for the next 10 years of your life. Like, realize that, you know what, I'm not going to think about that right now. I'm just going to give it a minute. Because a lot of times when we get that news or that obstacle, there's so much emotion involved in how you're feeling over it, that sometimes you just should feel the emotion for a little bit, but not try to make that decision.
Yeah, like you can pause instead of reacting. I think that's good.
Yeah.
So I've been saying pause a lot, but Henry says it back to me, my son. Go to the next slide. Let's see. I know we're starting to get, okay. So here's again, to Marianne. She really has some great advice in the book. So many people did, including like Isadora, who's on the call. But what does self-care look like? I mean, I think one of our friends, Emmeline, said it can almost be hijacked. Sometimes self-care is, I need to schedule an appointment with the dentist. I like that. But then Marianne, yoga, cuddles with kids, checking in with each other that things are all right, and making small changes, alterations to make sure everyone in our family is feeling comfortable. So I think that resonated with us. Like my husband is a fine artist, so we'll talk and figure out what we need. Like he knew I need to be on this call today, I need to prep, so when can I do that? And then he's been trying to paint into the wee hours of night, so then I'm trying to get the kids to bed a little bit better. We have a terrible schedule right now, I'm going to be candid, but we're working with each other and kind of communicating so that we can make things work, and we're not just assuming the other is mad or anything like that. So let's see, is there anything else here we wanted to add to? Do you have family check-ins, Heather? Was that you?
We started to prior to COVID, which probably means we should have continued it, but then, everything went off the rails. I think one of the things I like on this slide too is sometimes the mommy guilt gets in your way a little bit. So if you can find something that, like designating a certain amount of time with a kid, or doing a project with a kid, or having like 10 minutes in the morning with one of your children, or each of your children separately, then you can be like, okay, because I think realistically as moms, if we all take a look at how much we do and how much time we spend with our kids, we're doing a great job, and we're doing fine. We're doing fine. So acknowledge that a little bit, let go of that guilt a little bit. But if you need something like a little like checkpoint that I checked in, everything's okay with this kid, everything's okay with this kid, now I can go to the studio and not have that on my brain.
Yeah. Or if you find that you can't create with, a kid, or you're a caregiver, who knows, maybe it's that staying up later at night, or waking up early in the morning, or just taking the 15 minutes that you need for yourself, we'll get to tips in a minute. Let me see. But I do, like you said, acknowledging this is a season, everything is temporary. So, okay. So now we're on to tactical tips. Let me see where we're at with time. So I want to leave time for questions too. But set a timer. That's one of Heather's favorite things, right? But you said no more than 30 minutes?
No more than 30 minutes. Like that would be a high end. I'm just always so amazed when I do set the timer for even 15 minutes, how much can actually be accomplished in that short amount of time. I know I didn't think I had any time the other day to get in the studio, and I was like, you know what, 30 minutes, set Jack in front of the screen for 30 minutes. And I finished in like 25 minutes, the little bit that I wanted to get done. And I was like, it hasn't even been 30 minutes and I got all this done. So I don't underestimate that, but the timer is kind of a nice idea, because then you don't have to think about how long I've been doing this, where am I, what's going on. Timer will go off, and then it's time to like kind of move on to your next activity. I'm trying to think of anything. We kind of talked about a lot of this. The chipping away.
Mine, though, I will say deadlines, prompts, and parameters, those have really helped me. So if I need to do something, like if you have limited time, you don't want to spend that limited time overthinking what you want to do with that. Like, I need to spend the most beautiful 20 minutes ever. No, but if you say, oh, here's something that I started, here's some watercolor paper I cut up already that I can just go, and I'm working on a color study project, or I'm drawing one thing from my pantry, so that you just can jump right in.
And that kind of goes with, if you need to, and you can, have a dedicated space. And I literally mean that could be a tray. It could be a Rubbermaid bin that you can just open and your stuff's ready to go, a little corner. I have been working for the last 5 years out of a tiny corner of my den. And I've done some really large paintings there, but it's just working and it's easy. And people want to see my studio, and I'm like, it's this tray and whatever canvas I'm working on. So I think that helps, and it helps because then you can grab those little minutes of time. And I forgot this too, but how much writing I think helps, working through the mom guilt, the things you're thinking, the things you're worried about, the things that are mentally stopping you from creating. If you can sit down and just do a little bit of writing, it goes back to like the artist way, and the, writing morning pages and things like that. It's super, super helpful. I've always found whenever I'm stuck, that's kind of a go-to for me.
Same, yeah. And chipping away. Because I feel like I am a poster child for chipping away very slowly at things. So here's two people from our book. One's an abstract painter, Karina Banya. One's an illustrator in Indiana. And, they just creative exploration, everything is kind of going into, anything can count as creative exploration. We talk about that, where you might think I have no time. Like, your hands-on time creating is not your only art making. Like, if you're an artist or a creative person, it's there all the time. So it's like I was washing the shower one day, and I was like, these soap patterns are really cool. And I was also listening to an art podcast at the time. So to me, that's creative time.
Yeah. And I think we put these, when you look back and you read biographies of artists and, famous artists, they spend a lot of their time like enjoying other people's company, going out for great wine, taking walks, being like in nature. Don't underestimate all that. It all affects your creative practice, and it counts as studio time as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And I'll read the bottom part of Penelope's. It really helps to prioritize. I agree. letting go of things that don't matter so much and just doing the top few that really matter. I've learned that even if you even if you just let a few things go, somehow the world keeps spinning. So true. Okay, I think we have a couple more. Just an illustrator and another abstract artist. Yeah, Meredith, for example, spoke about grieving her old life and switching gears. She's another example of someone who went to writing and painting, and then she said, you know what, I need to stop for a little bit, and that's okay too. There's some people in our book who have mentioned that they just needed to stop making, and that's okay because it came back later and they knew it would come back. And that's important to remember. Sometimes you just need a break. And then it makes you remember how much you need something. Okay. Anything else on this page from you?
No, I think we hit on a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah, I know, it's like, not that it's repetitive, but it's really not brain surgery. Like,
yeah. And I'm hoping there's an underlying theme of having grace with yourself throughout this. And knowing that you're the one that's creating these deadlines and this idea of perfection sometimes in your own head, and you need to just take a break and understand that don't put so much pressure on yourself. It's okay. And not everyone in the world, even artists that do not have any children and do not have, let's say, any huge responsibilities, they're not in the studio every single day painting all day long. Like it's not, that's just not how it ever goes. And I feel like we all feel like we're supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, they're doing their taxes on Tuesdays, you know. Yeah. Actually, that is one thing I remember where someone was like, having specific time for things, like on Saturday morning, I go and do the groceries. So that if they were starting to stress about it and they thought, I need to get to that now, they're like, nope, Saturday is the time for that. So now I'm going to focus on this, because I think a lot of us, we can feel pulled in many directions at once and think, oh, I got to do this. Oh, no, I saw that the laundry needs to be done. Well, but then you're, not getting to your priorities. So I think that's it for the slides. We just wanted to show you us on our glorious one last moment before COVID.
Right. Our last, yes, COVID-free moment.
If you can't tell, we get really passionate about this topic of finding time to create. But I don't know. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so I'd love to.
We didn't cover.
So I'm just going to unmute myself for a second. I just want to reiterate to everyone that we are recording this. And so we'd love everyone to ask their questions, whether they want to be recorded or not. So if you don't want to be recorded, but you do have questions, there's two ways you can do this. You can put your question into the group chat and I'll ask it for you. Or you can turn your camera off by going to the bottom left hand and stopping your video, and you'll still be able to ask your question and it will just say your name or show your picture that you use for your Zoom account. So you can just give us a little heads up that you want to ask us a question. Courtney, who in the room, is watching, so you can just put your hand up and she'll call on you, or again, you could put your question into the chat.
Or I know the other thing, if anyone just needs permission, we like to grant permission to people. So if you'd like permission to not do laundry this week, or you'd like permission to, I don't know, make bedtime a little later, or give your kids a little more screen time, we can do that for you. We can tell you, yes, you can do that.
Yeah. Or to give yourself an hour-long bath.
We cannot promise you won't be interrupted, though.
Yeah. So, but it's okay if no one has questions either. I'm trying to think.
Isadora does.
Oh, Isadora does. Only the best questions. Let's hear.
Well, first of all, I think you guys are so inspiring. So thank you so much for talking about all these things. But I guess my specific question was about how it took you 5 years to write the book. So in that, if I'm quoting you guys right, but if in that 5 years, how did you keep going, and how did you keep believing that this was something that would eventually manifest? Even though you're putting in all this work and you don't yet have all of these things lined up, how did you guys have that conversation and keep each other kind of moving through that whole process?
I can say, one, it helps a lot to have a partner in that process. I don't know that I would have been able to solo do it, but I think I also can speak for both of us in a bit of a woo-woo way. Like, once I spoke out loud, I wanted to do this, it felt like I didn't have a choice, and in a good way. And then once I talked to Marissa, it felt like it was going to happen no matter what. So I think there was this blind faith that made it a lot easier for it to take 5 years, because I'm like, well, there's not a deadline, but I know this is going to happen. And come hell or high water, we're going to make this happen. You know, if I have to like write it out by hand and stitch bind it, it's going to happen. So I think having that, there was just something about this passion project that really, I don't know, I had that faith in it. And not a lot of projects are like that, but this one was.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, having a partner helps. It's like an accountability buddy. Another thing was our expectation of what it was. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we'd love it to be successful. We'd love it to be selling 100 million copies. Like, but we also knew that we just wanted to get the message out. Our real big goal was that we wanted to help people, because it was in us. It's important to us. We get pissed off if we hear people saying that they can't do stuff. So the goal was to get it out, and it didn't have to be published by X publishing company to be successful. We actually at some point kind of gave up, and we're going to do it on Blurb, and realized it was going to cost like $80 a book
to make it pretty, because we really, ideally, like if we're shooting for the stars, we wanted it to be hardcover, we wanted it to be full color. Having the art be prominent in it was super important. I didn't just want a picture of the artist and their words, I wanted to see their work. So that was super important to us. And when I laid it out in Blurb, and then it was like, yeah, but it's going to be $80. And, you know, we're not, you know, Cy Twombly. No one's going to be buying like our book for $80. So I think we everything aligned, and we found a publisher just in time.
Yeah. Awesome. And we might have been like, it's funny because like we did 3 sort of, what do you call it? Like revisions of it. It started out as more of a book that we did write, but then it really merged into something else. And then it really became just an interview book. So that, in a lot of ways, logistically, that was easier to, you know, create good questions that we were interested in hearing about, and then reaching out to people that we thought would be wonderful fits, that would be also willing to share, you know, like yourself. But.
I think also what's really interesting is that that Heather was Googling about mother artists and didn't find anything. And I think that it's just such an important book to have and to have been made. And have you noticed that people have been more receptive to it? Or do you have a kind of arc of how you see it going out into the world pre-COVID, of course, you know? But because COVID, I feel like it just kind of changed everything. But I just feel like it is just so hugely important to talk about those things. And I just wondered, any insight on that?
I think we had a better plan prior to COVID, definitely. I would certainly like to get it in more libraries and places that more people have access to it. And I know Marissa and I have talked about donating to some places and community centers and things like that, but that's kind of all been up in the air because of everything. And I need to point out that Google thing was in 2011. 2011, I couldn't find anything.
And I think it has shifted. So like in 2015, even there wasn't as much out there where people were like, you know, that's too niche. No one's interested in hearing about just artists who are moms. I don't think that's the case right now. And actually, I know you guys had Kaylin Butine come to NMSU, and the work that she's doing with artist mothers. I mean, she's taken something and just gone nuts with it in a good way. And I'm loving watching what she does. And
Sarah with the Artist Parent Index, which is really great. And then there's been
Mother in Residency, right?
Right, and then Lincoln Clayton's an Artist Residency in Motherhood, which we have as a project featured in Labor, Motherhood, and Art in 2020. And I think, you know, there has been, you know, a big part of what we attempted to tackle with Labor, Motherhood, and Art in 2020 is looking at kind of, we start the exhibition with Mary Kelly, with her postpartum document. We have Antepartum, which is a prologue to Postpartum Document, which is one of the first feminist works based in motherhood about laboring both as a mother and as an artist simultaneously. And the lack of institutional discussion about it, the lack of this knowledge or interest or passions that intertwine when you are a mother and an artist simultaneously, and the difficulties, all the things that you're talking about, which is like finding 5 minutes just to create, or and elevating this conversation and so that it's a conversation that is happening in more institutions around this nation. You know, it was really interesting how many stories I've heard now that I've curated this exhibition with Laurel Nakadati as the co-curator, about so many different artists who were told that they couldn't become mothers if they wanted to be serious artists, or they couldn't do both things simultaneously. It wasn't possible, period. Artists who told me about like about graduate professors that they had that told them if they had kids before they started their arts career that they would never have one. Or artists, like really major artists, that told me stories about people coming up to them at their opening and being like, oh, we heard you're pregnant, now what are you gonna do? And it's just
telling them that they ruined their lives. I've heard that.
Right. And this, again, these are in the 2000s, and you know, you're talking about 2011 to 2014 to now 2020. And these are still things that Mary Kelly started in 1973. And this is still a discussion we need to have in 2020. And how are we going to change that? And we change that by doing things like what you're doing, publishing books, supporting one another, making sure that as institutions we have exhibitions like the one we have right now, purchasing women artists by women mothers for collections. You know, we do it through actions and hopefully supporting one another and getting the word out there. And your book is doing just that. Like, your book is a great resource for curators like me, for collectors, for other artists, for inspiration for other artists, right? To know that like you can actually do this. It's not non-doable. And also for people who need to know how to support women who are artists and having babies. Like, you know, there's a lot of people out there that you know, it's not necessarily that they're being malicious. They just actually don't get it. Like, how will you be able to be a mom and create at the same time? Like, you need this kind of information for that too. Like, it doesn't mean that they're ignorant in the naivete way, not in the malice type of way, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and hopefully opening that space up too, where residencies start looking at what that looks like for a family to have, you know, or come and have a residency, or more and more having your children at openings even. I think one of the hardest things for me to do is when I became a mother, I felt like I had to separate my art from who I was. And the art was supposed to speak for itself completely, and I wasn't a part of that anymore, especially because I was a mom, because no one ever talked about that.
Uh-oh, she cut out.
Being a mother and being an artist, or even talking about having kids, and yeah, my kid's gonna come to the opening, or I'm gonna, you know, things like that. Just no one ever talked about it because they were afraid they were gonna be judged.
Yeah. And I think some of the correlations, like right now with, as we look at schools and what's going on with schools, and not just like, yes, in our book, just to clarify, had been on women, you know, mothers, but parents in general, because I know Heather and myself, we were both seeing, people weren't saying the same things to my husband in 2015. I think conversations are shifting as well over 5 years. They weren't saying like, oh my God, how are you making it work? You have a full-time job, you have an art practice. Why were they not telling him the same thing? Why were the males that I knew who were artists not, some of them were like, oh, I could probably paint more like Antonio Lopez Garcia and have more time if I didn't have children, but, you know, I really love my kid. You know, I do want to also say that we didn't really cover, we love, like, I love being a mother. I knew from when I was a kid, I always wanted children. I think I wanted 10 at one point. But, and it's a joy. It's not always easy, but I learned so much from them. I see the world. I like re-experiencing things, and becoming a mother was like such a big part of my own art journey and finally coming back to my art. So I just wanted to offer that up as well. And thanks, Marissa. I love what you're saying and everything. And I'm going to make sure I'm researching, following everybody that you mentioned.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, a question that I wanted to ask you guys, you know, one of the things that very often comes up with our exhibition is people asking me, well, are you a mother? And I'm not. And it's something that I think a lot about, especially since starting this process of curating this exhibition and having so many conversations with mothers. As two women who are artists and mothers and writers and all the things that you guys do, could you just talk maybe to, you know, to someone who's always kind of thinking about how can that happen? Like, how can you do it? Like, is it like you just have to do it?
Yeah.
You create a plan? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it is one of those things that you could think about until you're 70 and not make a decision. So I think it's just, you've got to go through, you got to do it. Like, if it's something that you want to happen in your life, and it's funny because Marissa, I was the opposite of Marissa. Like, I didn't think I was going to get married and have kids. That wasn't the life that I had pictured. And I'm so glad it's the life that I have now, but it wasn't what I had, you know, hoped for. So it wasn't what I had dreamed of in my head, and I'm glad it is what it is. But I think it is one of those things you can't overthink. You just, if you want to be a mom, you will find a way to make it work. Trust yourself and how ingenuitive you are, you know, and your creativity as an artist and your background as an artist serves you really well as a mother. Yeah.
Well, and you are keeping two very cute dogs alive. So you are a dog mom. But I also think, you know, we all have whatever circumstances are thrown. You know, some of us have, you know, maybe you're single, maybe you're not, maybe you're, you know, somebody died in your life. Like, I always have to bring up death, I know me. But there are things that happen, and life is not a movie. It's not what you think, you know, it is what it is. So you can do the things that you want, or at least try, or you can not. Like, those are your options, in my opinion. And I don't want to, because I think maybe in 2008, I was that person who was looking at, like, I was an interior designer. I wanted to be doing design, and there was a recession. There was all these things that were happening, and I tried my butt off, to get this job I wanted. And I realized I can't only live my life based on what somebody else is going to give to me. So if there's things that I want to do, I just need to be brave and try to do those myself. And for me personally, I had a loss of my brother in 2005, and that made me think I can get through these really difficult things in my life, and we all have them in whatever moments. Then, you know, who cares if I look stupid to somebody who's not trying? But that was like my wake-up call, I think. And then having a kid just made me feel more efficient and lit that fire a little bit more. And here we are. You know, you can make anything work.
Are there any other questions? Courtney, are you looking at everyone to see if anyone's raising their hand? Well, I want to say thank you so very much, Marissa and Heather and Isadora. Thank you so much for introducing me to these fantastic, phenomenal women, women mothers. I really appreciate you guys taking part. Everyone who's on the call, please check uam.nmsu.edu for other Mama Create Ups, and, you know, participate in everything we've got coming up. These are, as much as we can, we hope to help some moms out, being part of this really great community. And I really hope that everyone checks out your website, buys your book. We put a link to the book in the chat. So you can copy and paste that link. When we post the video, which we're going to do, we'll post the video on our website. We'll also have a post to get the book and to follow you guys on Instagram and to email you guys if anyone has any questions or things such as that. So thank you so much for taking part. We really appreciate you being here. You are fantastic. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for spending an hour with us. We really appreciate it too.